delighted to be here to be the initial illuminator for this inaugural IU's Ignite session. When I first started hanging out with remote sensing geeks, I asked somebody why it was that satellites didn't work in the brown water, and I got an exegesis on the complexity of the physics of optics. But America, like all great nations, was born on the coast, and our economic, cultural, and social roots remain on the coast. And I'm not going to talk about the physics of optics. I'm going to talk about the optics of politics and the importance of connecting to them. We love our coast. We love our coast to death. We began a migration to the coast 40 years ago that has continued unabated, both domestically and internationally. And in fact, coastal recreation and tourism is one of our major industries. But most of our people, many of our people live on the coast, and most of our economy is generated within the coast. So we were truly all connected economically to the activities that take place on our coast, domestically again, and internationally. In fact, this is a map of the truck flows through the Port of New Orleans. Most of America's consumer goods come through ports. And these are the ones that are coming through New Orleans, even into the heartland. And so you can see all of America is a coast, and isn't it amazing that it also looks like a watershed map? And yet, last year, every continent, every category, we broke records on extreme events. And so we now have extreme events impacting people, where all the people and the money are, and we are driving up the dollar value of these losses. So what is risk? Risk is where I am, my geography. It is what kind of place am I living in, my geomorphology. It is also how I perceive risk. When I was young, every summer we traveled across the South cleaning up cemeteries, fine Southern tradition, and stayed at the Longfellow House across the beach from the Gulf of Mexico. One dark night when I was about 5 years old, after dinner we went out there, wind and waves crashing. I was terrified until the next morning I went back out on the dock and saw that the water was only 6 inches deep. So risk isn't just where you are, your geography. It isn't just your geomorphology, although the limestone of South Florida is much more at risk than the granite of Maine. It is also what you perceive risk to be. For instance, if you happen to live in a bowl and there's a big storm coming, pushing a lot of water in front of it, and it has a lot of rain associated with it, and you think you're protected by 100-year levees, and then the rainfall comes down the watershed back on you, and you have a lot of poor people who can't go anywhere, you got a problem. In fact, not only do we have a lot of people and a lot of expensive property on the coast, we also have a lot of sick, elderly, and poor people living on the coast. Have you ever noticed where HUD puts its public housing on the coast? So this is a problem for us. And then more recently, we saw that coastal storms aren't just limited to the coast. Not only was Irene the storm that wouldn't die, but when she blew into Vermont, we learned that not only do they have a truly great lake, they are also a coastal state. So this challenge, and now we're here where people want to talk about climate change as though it was religion or a tooth fairy. What is that about? So what you think about these issues, extreme events or sea level rise, is a function of many different perspectives. I hang out with a lot of geeky, socially awkward climate scientists, and for the last decade, many of them have been freaked out at the rate at which the Greenland ice sheet is collapsing. Now, that'll only contribute 5 meters to the Atlantic Ocean, so those of you from the West Coast don't worry about it. But if you're in New York City, not only are you concerned about the Greenland ice sheet, but quite frankly, you're concerned about the fact that already you're now having severe flooding in the subways, and for some reason, all those humans don't want to go down in those rat tunnels. So, the bottom line issue, it's America. Who pays? I live at 8 feet above sea level, and I regularly give gratitude to people in Nebraska and other such places for the federal flood insurance program so that I can live in the low country. Thank you very much if you don't live on the coast. But we are all at risk, and we have many challenges facing us in changing regimes. But I have hope, because the Dutch, after thousands of years and more recently spending 3 decades and $100 billion to design the weir for the 10,000-year storm, have figured out that maybe they should design with Mother Nature. And that Mother Nature can provide wave attenuation, flood attenuation, water filtration cheaper, more effectively than anything that we can construct. But we also have to understand Mother Nature and how to design with her. So not only are we going to pour a lot of concrete over the next decade, no matter who's the president, we also have to figure out how we take advantage of that which Mother Nature does so much better than we do, and for so much cheaper than we do. So, as I said this morning, it's not about our platform, it's not about our data, our tools, our models, or any of that stuff. It's about how we connect with one another to demonstrate that we are accessible, relevant, and worth the return on investment that society is making.